The HomePod lineup has been sitting in a weird place for a while because Apple has released two HomePods and one is already discontinued and the other one is the only one they sell, yet it's called the HomePod Mini, which feels a bit bizarre. But we got some new leaks coming from Duan Ri today, which is not actually a leaker, but he does scour the interwebs and post stuff that he believes to be accurate. And through those repostings, he's proven to be somewhat reliable. So today we're talking about what the next generation regular HomePod might be. Let's begin. I wasn't sure how to feel about this, honestly, because for a while there, I was pretty much just in favor of the HomePod Mini being the only HomePod. In fact, I'm in favor of them dropping the term Mini. Just call that HomePod, because in the smart speaker world, everyone tried to do, like an entry-level model and then a really high-end, super expensive, fancy speaker, and no one bought those. Even Amazon and Google could not get many people to buy into those, but the general market has spoken, I think, with their wallets in saying that, okay, a smart speaker is cool. There's a place for it in our homes, but we don't want to spend more than $50 to $100 on it. Trying to sell a smart speaker north of $200 usually completely tanks, and not that many people end up buying it unless you start getting into maybe having a smart hub with a display. Then people might be able to justify it as kind of a stationary tablet or that kind of thing. But I must admit, time and time again, when talking about the HomePod Mini and hearing people's opinions on it, it's become quite common both in Discord and in comment sections and on Twitter for people to say that they're disappointed with the overall sound quality of the HomePod Mini and they want something a bit louder, they want something with a bit more bass that can fill a room. And my response for the longest time has just been, well, buy more HomePod Minis. With AirPlay 2 you can just have the same music coming out of all of them simultaneously, so a much better use of your money is not buying the original HomePod for $200 to $300. You're probably just better off buying 2 or 3 HomePod Minis, tethering them together into stereo pairs and letting that fill your room. But even that might not be enough for some people. But I also think it's safe to say the original HomePod was a bit of a flop, even when Apple discontinued it and announced that it would be available while supplies last, but once they sold out they would not come back in stock. It actually took several months for Apple to sell out of all those HomePods because no one really wanted them, and that's not surprising at all considering how expensive they are and how limited the connectivity is. I think that the original HomePod suffered the same fate as AirPods Max, except maybe even harsher, because it was going for an audiophile audience, but it had average consumer connectivity, so it had really great sound quality, but you couldn't really use it with your Mac, you couldn't really use it as a tool, you pretty much could only tell Siri to play Apple Music off of it, and there wasn't much else it could do, so the average consumer didn't see the point in dropping $300 or more on a speaker like that, and audiophiles couldn't really use it within their ecosystems much, so they didn't really see a point in buying in it, and you just kind of got this weird distorted market of Apple Music enthusiasts out there, and some people bought a bunch of them, I know, but hearing about why some people think the HomePod Mini isn't good enough and hearing that the original HomePod was too expensive, I have to agree, there's gotta be a sweet spot in the middle, right, that maybe Apple just hasn't found quite yet, and Duan Ri posted these updated icons that were showing up on Weibo of a different icon for the HomePod that appearingly shows a different design, okay? It's a subtle difference. It's definitely not the HomePod Mini because of how much taller it is. It looks like a vase, and it's certainly not the original HomePod icon, which is shown right next to it. It looks like a mixture of the two. It's like they got together and had a child, and hopefully we could have the best of both with this product. And what I could kind of get into just by looking at this icon is the idea that this larger size HomePod, whether Apple wants to just call it HomePod, or some people have suggested calling it HomePod Max because it's more expensive and bigger or whatever, this could be using the same exact displays that they use on the HomePod Mini, and that might be able to help with manufacturing efficiencies and lowering the overall cost as reusing certain parts. So having the same display on both, I think, makes a lot of sense, and concepts have been floating around of reusing the same chips, like the S5 and the U1 chip, which are running a heavily modified version of tvOS. That's honestly what HomePods run because they act as a smart home hub for your appliances, and the software that runs for a device that doesn't have a display has to be very tinkered down and very small and basic, so the S5 chip gets the job done well. But of course, this HomePod would support the spatial awareness features of the HomePod Mini, so you could hold your iPhone close to it and start casting your music pretty simply. But then, of course, the price point is, I think, what ultimately everything comes down to. And I think that if you're going to keep the HomePod as a smart speaker only, and it's just meant for, you know, voice controls, setting timers, and doing basic things with Siri and asking it to play, you know, different music, then I really don't think it could be much of a hit if it goes north of $200. This is the part of the report that we have no clue what Apple's thinking. There's no leaks or rumors for what this updated HomePod would cost. But to me, that's the breaking point. I think if you start going over $200, it's not that it's a guaranteed flop, but in my opinion, you would need to improve the connectivity. So if you're going over $200, you're going to start pushing into more audiophile territory, and that's when you might want to actually include things like headphone jacks, or if you can't do that, at least normal Bluetooth connectivity, so people could connect this to laptops or whatever and use them as their actual stereo monitors, and you're not going to get a lossless playback over that, I know, but as of now, if you try to just connect your Mac to your HomePods via AirPlay, there's going to be a lot of latency, and I've tried it, it doesn't work incredibly well. As far as AirPlay goes, I think that Apple should just streamline being able to use your HomePods as a home theater system for your Apple TV, which is still a little bit too complicated to set up, in my opinion, and it took them way too long to even let you connect the HomePod to the Apple TV. But even just as a home theater setup, where you could scale it maybe by 2 or 4 of these HomePods and connect them to your Apple TV and have great 3D audio and sound coming from different directions, and all the HomePods are communicating with each other and they know where they're positioned in the room thanks to the U1 chip. There's all kinds of use cases I could imagine, but I still think that if you're not going into the audiophile market, they should really keep it under the $200 mark. If they could preferably get it even lower, $180 or less, I think that would be a real smash hit, because people at Apple stores would try out the HomePod Mini, think, oh, that looks pretty good, but if you're willing to just spend another $80, that's not even twice the price, you get a way louder speaker that sounds way better, and it'll be super immersive for all of your great Ted Lasso viewing sessions you have at home because you're an Apple customer. That means you have to have TV Plus. Then I could see a higher priced HomePod actually succeeding, but I'm really just hesitant to let Apple make the same mistakes again with that original HomePod, which was clearly not the direction the market was interested in going. I think we need to stay far, far away from the $300 starting price, and that's why I think my limit is $200 for a successful product. So if they made a larger size HomePod and it cost $250, I would have a really hard time seeing that sell well or seeing people be interested in it again, unless they were starting to pitch it as more as an audiophile accessory. I'm not the type of person to suggest the headphone jack should come back on more things, but Apple, if you're gonna keep the headphone jack on MacBooks and Mac Pros and iMacs, then that at least proves to me that when it comes to the Pro market, you're comfortable having a direct lossless playback, and if these HomePods could be optimized for playing that extreme lossless audio that Apple Music now supports, then have a way for more of your speakers to support it than just standard AirPlay, because that's pretty limited in what you can actually do, and I think it's okay for the speakers to go higher if you want them to become tools. But if we're just looking at convenience smart home appliance, then yeah, keep it under $200, but I'm curious if you guys disagree. Do you think the price should be lower than that or higher than that for average consumer accessories, and do you think the HomePod lineup should basically just stay with the Mini and it doesn't need anything else? On a side note, I personally would love it if Apple made a mobile HomePod. I've really enjoyed those in the past, being able to take a wireless speaker with you, you know, to the park to listen to music, or if you're going to be inner tubing down a river and you want some music to go with you, having a waterproof mobile speaker I think is a pretty popular market that Apple should get into in the future. All that good stuff, feel free to let me know. This is your Apple Sheep here. I'll see you guys in the next one.